Welcome to Captain's Quarters Podcast at a later time. Hello there, Davey Longwood, Mandy Joe, and my son, Will the Historian. Great to have everybody here. Normally on some of our occasions, we have the guest wait in the green room, but I kind of like having my son around, so I'm going to let him be a part of the show the whole time. So I hope people will come in and watch what we're doing tonight. We have a few important things to talk about. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, how do you find us? YouTube, Captain's Quarters Podcast. Take that QR code, go find out about us, like us, subscribe to us, hit the bell. You'll get messages every time. And let's have a good time being Captain's Quarters Podcast. We have some good stuff tonight to share with you. And we have some things to be honest and forthright about tonight. But first, let's acknowledge the Pirate and Treasure Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pirate and Treasure Museum is our full-time, complete, on-the-air sponsor. If you want a good tour of the Pirate Museum, come see me. But if I'm not there, I have other pirates that are there to do tours, and we do a lot of educational tours. The Pirate and Treasure Museum, it is the largest pirate museum in the world, not by its physical size, but by its content. So come and see us in St. Augustine. Upon that, ladies and gentlemen, this week, 8 Bells will be just a little bit special, sponsored by the Riker family of reenactors. And it's very special because, well, we've lost 3 major political figures in the country this past week. 3. Now, if you're not in on their politics, that's fine. But ladies and gentlemen, we still honor those. And I live by the adage, we do not speak ill of the dead. Upon that note, Davey, what's our first 2? Alfred Kissinger, Henry Kissinger the most, was an American diplomat, political scientist, geopolitical consultant, and politician who served as United States Secretary of State and National Security Advisor under the presidential administrations of Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford. Kissinger received the 1973 Nobel Peace Prize for his work negotiating a ceasefire in Vietnam. He was 100 years old, ladies and gentlemen, and I will say I did get one opportunity to shake his hand when I was in Washington, D.C. Frances Husson Sternhagen, an American actress. Sternhagen was known as a character actress who appeared on and off Broadway in movies and television for over 6 decades. She received numerous accolades, including 2 Tony Awards, a Drama Desk Award, a Saturn Award, as well as nominations for 3 Primetime Emmy Awards. Pardon me, I'm going to have this cough all night. She gained prominence in Primetime Emmy Award nominations for her recurring role as Esther Calvin in the sitcom Cheers and Bunny McDougal in HBO series Sex and the City. She was 93 years old. Victor J. Kemper, an American cinematographer. Kemper was American of the American Society of Cinematographers and was its president twice, from 93 to 96 and 99 to 2001. Some of the movies he worked on: Last of the Red Hot Lovers, Dog Day Afternoon, Oh God, The Jerk, National Lampoon's Vacation, and Jingle All the Way. He was 96 years old. Mary Louise Cleave, an American engineer and NASA astronaut. She also served from 2005 to 2007 as a NASA Associate Administrator for the Science Mission Directorate. Spaceflight experience. She was aboard the STS-61B Atlantis, launched at night from the Kennedy Space Center, Florida, and returned to land on runway 22 at Edwards Air Force Base, California. STS-30 on Space Shuttle Atlantis, May 89, and was a 4-day mission during which the crew successfully deployed the Magellan Venus exploration spacecraft. She was 76 years old. Julius Wesley Becton Jr., United States Lieutenant General, Director of Federal Emergency Management Agency, and Education Administrator. He served as Commanding General, 7 Corps in the 1978 and as Deputy Commanding General for Training of the United States Army Training and Doctrine Command, TRADOC, in 1981. He retired in 83. He was 97 years old. And very important, Sandra Day O'Connor was an American attorney, politician, and jurist who served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States from 81 to 2006. O'Connor was the first woman to serve as a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. A moderate conservative, O'Connor was known for her precisely researched ideas. She was 93 years old. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our 8 bells. Give them to me, Mr. Davey Longwood. Aye, very good. Very important people. Henry Kissinger was very, very important. Whether you liked his politics or not, he did a lot of good for the world. And I see Mr. Will, the historian, has a small smile on his face. What are you looking at?
So, believe it or not, a lot of my students are chiming in right now and saying their name. I told them if they get extra credit if they watch tonight.
Very good. All right.
A lot of my students are starting to chime in. I've been reading the comments, so
good.
They're all like, "We need that extra credit."
And maybe I see McRea from your 7th period. I see Ransom Mayhem. So is Guatemala Ball part of your group?
Yes.
Very good.
That's his name.
And Shannon D.
Okay.
Antonio. Well, now your students have met your father.
Yeah.
Hi. I am your father.
This will be a fun conversation tomorrow. That's for sure.
I'm glad. Well, you know what? When conversations open, isn't that a good way for your students to learn?
I like it when they talk.
Very good.
Well, when we have discussion, not during lessons.
All right, let's go with Joke of the Week with Mini Mayhem, sponsored by Marco's Pizza. Great pizza, ladies and gentlemen, new here in St. Augustine, and I love them. Go ahead, Davey.
Ahoy, mates. Mini Mayhem here with a Joke of the Week, sponsored by Marco's Pizza. What is a pirate's favorite snack? Think about it, and I will give you the answer at the end of the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have the reveal to that joke at the very end of the show. Cat fur just floating through the air. Look at that. And quote of the week. Quote of the week is very important because we learn certain things by people that have made some very important thoughts into words that have become public. And this quote of the week is always sponsored by Spyglass Travel. If you want to come to St. Augustine and take a walking tour of the most historic city in the nation, Spyglass Travel. They're good friends of mine, and they do a great job. So, ladies and gentlemen, the quote of the week.
Oh, yes, and because of what the subject matter we're talking about tonight, I had to pull it from.
Very good. Well, let's see it. Bravery is the capacity to perform properly, even when scared half to death. Omar Bradley. Hi, Omar Bradley was a very, very prominent general during the Second World War, but I'm sure Will the historian knows that.
I do.
And if there's any of you hearing noises like a running dog, right on cue. That is my basset hound, Matt. He was outside for a bit, and he's very excited. Come here, up here. Come on. Say hello to everybody. Come on, get up here. All right, be that way. So, give me my extra credit. Here's what I have to say. Lisette Avalese. If you want your extra credit, I think you have to stay for the whole show.
And participate, so we keep seeing you guys talk, because that helps us.
Yes. We want you to be a part of what we talk about. What's that?
There's 2 parts to their extra credit. One is if they write me like a 3 to 4 sentence thing talking about something that we say tonight, and they can get extra credit. And if they ask a question actually pertains to what we're talking about, they'll get more extra credit. And
All right, very good.
We're 2 weeks away from the end of this 9 weeks. So I think some of them are like, yeah, I want to get my 90,
Well, what we'll do is we'll go back through all. We have a time in the show for all of your students that are watching. We have a time in the show that we go back and scroll through all the questions, and we'll find those questions that are pertinent to what we're talking about. But for now, we also do a question of the week, which is sponsored by our Ancient City Sirens. It's good friends of mine, Miss Gina, and the dancers. They dance fusion and belly and tribal, and they work with us on all of our shows. And Ancient City Sirens sponsors the question of the week, which is, what is your favorite Christmas song? We want to see that in our comments. Oh, and one suggestion, no Mariah Carey. I know. Before we go any further, though, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody watching, I want to say something very important, especially at this time of year. Depression can be a very big thing, and we want people to understand. If you have problems, if you're sad, reach out, please. Now we're broadcasting the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Please reach out, talk to people, your family, your friends, your loved ones. They would rather talk to you than talk about you after it's over. So please reach out. There was an incident here in St. Augustine that's very sad. I'm not going to talk about it or give details, but very sad that a person here in St. Augustine found it necessary to hurt themselves permanently. And it's just, there are a lot of people that will help. You may not feel like you have family. You may not feel like you have anybody to talk to, but I can guarantee you that you do. Your teachers, your pastors, your friends, your parents really will listen to you. It's very, very important. So please, ladies and gentlemen, be mindful of what you consider is a way out. It's not. As our quote was all about, be brave. It's not easy, but be brave. And don't let people downplay everything. So this is our hope for you, that if you have problems, call, text, email, reach out. You want to talk to old Captain Mayhem? I'm here. We would love to have the knowledge that we have said a kind word to make sure everybody continues on and enjoys life. Enough said, I think, Mr. Davey. Enough said. Upon that note, let's talk about crew adventures completed. First off is our boat trip. The crew of the St. Augustine Swashbucklers took a boat ride on the Matanzas Bay here in St. Augustine to see the Night of Lights. Davey, you have a few pictures? Why, there's Davey.
And you.
And, is on mine there too? Yep. We were on the Matanzas Bay looking at the Night of Lights. There's many of us. St. Augustine is one of the 10 top cities to view with all the white lights, as stated by the National Geographics. There's some of our crew in there looking up through and watching and having a good time. It was there, and there's the city waterfront, bathed completely in white lights. It is a Merry Christmas here. If you have never been here, come on out. Come and see us. Come and enjoy the Night of Lights in the oldest city in the nation. Good pictures, Davey.
Thank you.
The next one is crew adventures completed is the Seawolf Privateers. Our sister crew down in Flagler did a Santa Claus breakfast with all the little ones. I am told they had 150 people come down and have breakfast with Santa. There is Santa and Mrs. Claus. One of the memories that now the Seawolf Privateers could not be on the show tonight with us, but they wanted to have me let you know that one of their favorite memories of this particular time was a little girl that brought a letter to Santa and the little girl, let me go back. The Seawolf Privateers' main purpose is to help foster children and foster families. That's all they do. They raise money, they raise food, they raise toys, they raise whatever is needed for foster children and foster families. On that note, a little girl brought a letter to Santa, and all she wanted was to make sure that all the foster children in her area all had families to celebrate Christmas with. I am told that Santa and Mrs. Claus shed a few tears for all of that. Those are the good things, ladies and gentlemen. Those kind of things are great to shed tears for. They did great. And they have something else they're going to be doing. Let me see here. Where's my notes? I had to take notes for everything because we made some additions here. Let me see where my notes are. Right about here. All right, come on. There's that. Going across here and right to there. There we go. And their notes tell me that they are doing a food drive. Let's see, where is it? There we go. At the Publix at Beltiera Crossing this Saturday from 10 to 2, they will be gathering up food so that they can do Christmas dinners to foster families on December 19th. So if you're down in the Palm Coast area, Flagler County, go support them and help them out. There is a good cause there helping foster children. Upon that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go into Crew Adventures on the Horizon. The first one, come take a ride with Santa. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you can get on a golf cart for 10 people and ride around and see the lights while you're seeing the lights in the city itself, and ride with Santa and tell stories and jokes and sing songs and have a good time. All the way up till Christmas Eve. There are 58 more trips scheduled if you'd like to have one. Come see us. After Christmas, Santa's gone. So the people at Tasting Tours have asked Captain Mayhem to do some rides on the golf carts around the City of Lights, and there are 15 of those scheduled from the 27th to the 31st. If you'd like to join us, go to tastingtours.com and find the NOL Night of Lights characters and book with us. A couple of other things I want to share. Last minute notes. The Humane Society is hurting for food at this time, and so they sent me a message. During the next 4 Saturdays, December 2, 19, 16, and 30, the St. Augustine Humane Society will be accepting donations of pet food at Santa's North Pole Workshop on Old Moultrie Road, the Humane Society's local facility. Because our pet pantry inventory is extremely low, we are reaching out to the community to help us restock our pet food pantry for the holiday season and to begin the year with a better stock pantry. Our work never ends because the need doesn't end. Help us help the pets in need. There will also be letters to Santa mailbox where your pets can make their own letters to Santa, and they can drop those off with their wish list for the upcoming year. The North Pole Workshop will be open from 12 noon to 2 p.m. each Saturday with candy canes and holiday music. Of course, food donations can be left at our pavilion on any day at any time. I'm going to put the word out to the St. Augustine Swashbucklers that maybe we kind of do some kind of a gathering and try to help them out to give them a big donation by the end of the year. But we have people that are watching us from other locations, Utah, Alabama. Check your humane societies, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen articles that the humane societies are overflowing with unwanted fur babies. That's really sad. If I had the way and means, I'd have my house full of fur babies because I love kids, the four-legged kind. So check your local humane society and see if you can help them because Captain Mayhem said so. Upon that note, we have one other thing to talk about, and it's a friend of mine who's a pirate, and he does a cannon shoot on the 31st. Let me see if I can find that note so I can give everybody the proper time. Let's see. That is this guy right here. And there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 31st of December, from 9:30 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, a black powder event. If you want to fire black powder, you can go on down. Great food available. Big Bang Theory. Bring your cannon for a fun day. It's $25 to shoot if you have your own cannon, assorted targets. It's down on Highway 19, 9.5 miles north of State Road 50 in Hernando, Florida. Hi, I heard a blast. Very good. So if you're interested and you don't get all the information, please send us some information and we'll send out it'll be posted on our Facebook page. One other thing that I want to do, let's see, put that away. And I have something else. Talking about Santa and the good years. I'm not sure how to start this. Let me say this. I had a 7-year-old girl on the Santa ride the other night who dearly still, I believe, wants to believe in Santa. But her mother told her truth. And when the Santa asked the mom said, I never want to lie to my children, so I told her. I'm okay with that. But the uncle that was on the ride thought it was hilariously funny to needle the child and needle Santa Claus. That wasn't proper. So going around Facebook lately has been something that means a lot to me, and I want to read it to you. And it's a son that asks his dad about Santa. So please allow me this few minutes. The son says, Dad, I think I'm old enough now. Is there really a Santa Claus? And Dad says, okay, I agree that you're old enough, but before I tell you, I have a question for you. You see, the truth is very dangerous. Once you know something, you can never unknow it. Once you know the truth about Santa, you will never again understand and relate to him as you do now. So my question to you is this: are you sure you want to know? There was a brief pause, and the son said, yes, Dad, I would like to know. And Dad says, okay, I will tell you. Yes, there is a Santa Claus. And the son says, really? And Dad says, yes, really. But he's not an old man with a beard and a red suit. That's just what we tell kids. You see, kids are really too young to understand the true nature of Santa. So we explain it to them in a way that they can understand and accept. The truth about Santa Claus is that he's not a person at all. He's an idea. Think of those presents Santa gave you over the years when you were young. I actually bought all of those myself, son. I watched you open them, and it did not bother me that you didn't thank me. Of course not. In fact, it gave me great pleasure. You see, Santa Claus is the idea of giving for the sake of giving, without thought of thanks or acknowledgement. The son just simply said, oh. And Dad continued, so now that you know, you're now part of it. You're now part of the story. You have to be Santa Claus too now. That means you can never tell a young kid the secret, and you have to help in selecting Santa presents for them. And most important, you have to look for opportunities to help people. Got it? Help each other this Christmas and be kind. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the message I give to you. Santa is an idea. I've played Santa on and off for over 20 years. I've had some wonderful experiences with children that want to believe, of all ages, that still believe. There's nothing wrong with the veil of believability being lifted from your eyes, as long as you understand that the entire concept of Christmas and Santa is a selfless act of giving and making others feel good. So I hope that you'll join me in making sure that the magic of Christmas stays alive, because it's very, very important. The magic of good will and giving is really the most important thing about life. Upon that note, I think it's time to move on. What do you say there, Will the historian? Do you agree with your dad?
I do. And I'd first like to say that I'm reading some of these comments, and some of my students are acting like that I'm not at school and won't contact some parents in a moment. You don't start acting right with your comments.
Aye.
You know how we play. Y'all need to chill, and if you got a question, we'll talk, and then thing. But guys, all this little back and forth and some of these extra comments, we don't do that in my class. We're not going to do that right now, guys. All right.
Now, I see Nightingale in Florida said that Santa Claus is actually based on a real person who did give gifts anonymously, St. Nicholas. She's actually absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I read some other things. Santa Claus is a combination, ladies and gentlemen, of many cultures. Many cultures. Father Christmas is one of them also. All the old world had variations of the idea of St. Nicholas. There was really a St. Nicholas. He was the patron saint of children, and he did a lot for children. And over the years, all of it has been combined into the old, jolly, long beard, red suited person that everybody knows. So the entire thing of Santa and Christmas is very important. I do see some of the comments too. It's all right. I understand. And Malaz0707 says, yes, sir. Very good. Upon that note, ladies and gentlemen, really, we want to, I made a mistake today, son. When I first started promoting tonight, and I said, we want to honor Pearl Harbor. I think honor is probably not the right word. I think we want to pay tribute to the entire concept of Pearl Harbor. Am I right?
I think paying tribute is very much because it is something we could still do. And with tribute, when you pay tribute, you are definitely honoring those who sacrificed and fought for this country in a time when they weren't expecting to fight.
And it was Pearl Harbor was an extreme surprise to some, but to others it was not a surprise. So let's start with our conversation. And for those of you, it looks like I just disappeared. Am I coming back? There I am. Let's start with a proper introduction, even though he's been on the screen the whole show. For those of you that don't know, this is my son, who I'm extremely proud of, who has become a great, fine man and a history teacher. And I couldn't be any prouder of the job I've seen him do. So we have brought him in. The last time you came in, we talked about D-Day because your forte happens to be that part of American history, correct?
Yeah, at least American history, remembering the wars. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time teaching that.
So I'm going to throw some things at you, and then you answer or talk. But
okay.
The United States of America actually was trying to engage in isolationism at this point in time. There was a good portion of the country did not want to get involved in what was going on in Europe. They wanted to isolate themselves and stay out of it.
Yeah.
And a very large part of the population was on that side of isolationism. It was Pearl Harbor that changed that for just about everybody, correct?
Well, just about, but I think the thing that a lot of people need to understand is that while we were staying out of it, the physical aspect of fighting in the war, we were very much a part of the war with stuff like the Lend-Lease Act, where we were getting supplies and money to countries that were aligned with our interests. So we were actually funding parts of the Allied forces. And in some cases, we had our own soldiers and pilots almost doing like an exchange program, but they weren't sending anybody else. They could go over there and fight. Like that happened with the British Royal Air.
Well, a lot of
we
them
weren't involved in the war.
So the pilots, though, that you're talking about, their primary mission at the beginning was as a mission of training, not as a mission of engagement.
Yeah. But it's still, I mean, they're still going over there. That's still, so we can sit here all day and say, well, and yes, the United States really didn't want to get involved in war. There's still the bad memories. We're talking, I mean, most historians will tell you that World War I, World War II is really the same war with a 20-year ceasefire.
Yes.
And the United States didn't want to get involved in it. It was like, we just got out of the depression was just starting to back down.
To normalize.
And a lot of that was because of what the Lend-Lease Act did, allowed people to get work and allowed for the economy to start to grow. But just we weren't involved in the fighting until we were deliberately attacked. Though most of the politicians, especially the president, knew it was going to happen. When was it going to happen? Where we're going to go in on our own, or we're going to be dragged into this thing? I don't ever think we can sit there and say that we could have never been a part of the war. I honestly believe that what we would be. It was just a matter of when we would be a part of it. There was no stopping this. Hitler and the German army was just advancing too much, and they were on Britain's door, and Japan was conquering up islands like there was nothing. So the act of Pearl Harbor.
Let me step 2 steps back. The President of the United States, and by all means, you make sure you correct me here, but the President of the United States must have the backing of Congress to step into a war.
The President of the United States can send troops into more of like a backup, like backing up another country or a war for about 90 days. But yes, he cannot declare war.
But declaration of war, right. So Pearl Harbor.
After the president asks for one.
What's that?
The president has to officially ask for Congress to declare war, and then so they can take a vote.
Pearl Harbor actually, in a way, removed that. And maybe remove is not the right word. What it did was it brought most of the Congress on the side of the president, and they said, we have to step in now.
Yeah, the last time something like that happened was pretty much 9/11. That was pretty much with the intel went on. I mean, not everybody voted for this, and there was 1 or 2 members of Congress who voted against declaring war.
Right.
On Japan. So it wasn't unanimous, but it had majority, just like, so you can compare it a lot to what happened after September 11th, when President Bush talked to Congress declared war. That was the same thing, but the difference is, and we're not going to get too political on this, some say the difference is we knew who the enemy was at that time.
Right.
Of course, we'll go on something different on that. Well, we're not going to get into the other thing, but yeah, it was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So the Japanese became very full of themselves because they also had the understanding, or I'm trying to think of the right title. Their supreme naval commander was Yamamoto, correct?
Yeah.
He actually believed that it didn't matter what was going to happen. The United States was going to get involved in this, and he wanted to get ahead of the problem with the United States by attacking them.
Well, in all honesty, what really happened was the United States, what we should have to do is that the United States actually was sanctioning a lot of what Japan was doing, because Japan was committing. Well, there was no UN at this time, but if there would have been a UN, Japan was creating atrocities against humanity for some of the stuff they were doing. Some of the stuff they were doing in China was just atrocious, you know. And so what happens is we put them in sanctions, and the idea is like, if we can slow down their resources, maybe they'll stop for a little bit and they'll rethink this. Well, that just put them at odds with us. And Yamamoto wanted, yeah. But the emperor and his war council actually wanted to make an official declaration of war. One of the things that Yamamoto was charged with was he broke rules of engagement by not actually declaring war before he attacked. He was supposed to, so he didn't do it. And he said, well, if we declare war, they will prepare. We won't win. And so that's why it became a surprise attack. Even though everything pointed that they were going to attack, where they were going to attack was up in the air. Midway was the prime place that they thought was going to go. Small away won't cause much, but it'll make a statement. Instead, they went after Pearl Harbor. So
why did they go after Pearl Harbor?
Well, mainly because that's where the majority of our fleet was, in the Pacific. And if you knock them out, then they believed, according to their estimates, it would take a year, maybe a couple of years before America could build back up. By that point, there would be no stopping Japan, and they would either have to draw a seat. There would have to be like a treaty come up, or Japan might be able to get into like California. Like one of the things I remember, I've never fully got to watch all of it, but there's a show called Man in the High Castle. And it's an alternate history where the United States lose World War II. Right. And like California in the West is owned by Japan. There's like a small section of it.
Well, that was one of the purposes of Japan, was if they could cripple our Pacific Navy, it would open the corridors for them to come right to California and our western coast.
Yeah. And so, and California, and as we learn in history, California's population of, Asian Americans, people who were born in America, but their ancestry was of Asian Japan, because of this fear after Pearl Harbor, they pretty much all get rounded up and put in internment camps, because everyone's thinking that if they look Japanese, then they're going to be a spy. Even though we had countless Japanese Americans fighting in our military against their ancestral homeland.
It's the one, thinking again of a good word here, it is the one fallacy of the United States of America. Our country is so full of people from all over the world that when somebody, in this case of Asian descent, has a country that their lineage is from, we then automatically think they are the problem also.
Yeah.
It's the same problem with that has happened with any of the different issues of this kind in the history of the United States. So
a lot of that has to do with our fear of not understanding a lot of things, and fear, as I always tell my students, or I've told students plenty in the past, fear makes us do some crazy things that we don't ever really think about the consequences until after we've done it.
We react before we think.
We react a lot, which is very human nature. Almost, sometimes I can be as guilty of it that I can react before I think sometimes. I mean, just don't tell my wife I said that. All right. So
is she watching?
But, no, she might be. I might be in trouble now. No, but yeah, I can react. So that was the action. That's the action of a lot of people in the United States. We still have a little bit of that issue, I think, on some things. But this time point, and I can give you the story. I don't know if he's still alive. I need to look him up. But when I lived in Huntsville, I had made a friend. His name was Bill, and he was 10 years old when Pearl Harbor happened. And he lived in New Jersey, and he could.
You're caught. I knew I liked your wife.
Yeah. Bill would tell me this. Would tell me about when Pearl Harbor happened. the fear, because all they got was over the radio that they'd been. But he lived in New Jersey, and by the time Pearl Harbor happened, it's almost midday in New Jersey, and they just have it on radio, and then everything kind of went silent. They didn't know what was going on the East Coast, and the constant fear that what was going to happen, that they were actually, the cities were turning out their lights that first night in case something was coming from the other end, so they couldn't be seen.
I'm going to tell you a story. We had somebody that was a good family friend, and this is before you were born and before you and your mom and I were together. And it was somebody in our past when I was in high school, and he was known to me as my Uncle Bill. He was not a relation, but he was an Irishman. He was Bill Burke, and he was a police officer, a flat-foot, walking the beat police officer at the time of Pearl Harbor. And he tells me the story that at the time Pearl Harbor happened, during that time frame, and he doesn't say it's 10 hours or right at the time, but over a course of a couple of days, he said that all the bars where young boys were in the bars drinking and they would fist fight just because they were boys, the hostility between any of the Italians against the Irish and the Irish against the Germans and the Jews and whatever else, he said hostilities in New York City, in the Bronx and all around ceased. And all those men went running to their recruiting stations because they knew it was the right thing to do. And that's one of the important things that is very important for people to understand. When this country is attacked, patriotism becomes hugely strong.
Yes.
And that was a very, I always remember him telling me he's walking the beat, and all these boys of 18, 19, and 20 who were just, because drinking was okay back then at that age, he said they all quit, they all went, they all recruited, and everybody's joining the military. The Navy, the Army, the Marines, the Air, well, it wasn't the Air Force back then, the Army Air Corps, and they're all joining. So the good of Pearl Harbor is that it solidified a patriotic sense in this country. The bad is that it also ostracized anybody of Asian descent.
I will say, I would also add one of the good things, and this is one of the later things, one of the good things that, because of Pearl Harbor and war, and it really sounds bad to say, oh, the good things of war. It set our country on this path to being like a world leader. We were not a world leader. We were not a superpower. There were still many countries that thought we were not going to make it. I mean, they were at the, it was like dogs at the heinies at the carcass. They were waiting for us to fail. And because of World War II, we became the world leader. We became the superpower. Of course, so did Russia.
Let me stop you there for a minute. I know that we're supposed to be talking about World War II and Pearl Harbor, but let me ask you a question. You don't think World War I gave us the power or the idea that we would be a world power?
No, because we got into that so late.
Okay.
We by the time we got involved in World War I, if we had not got involved in World War I, a ceasefire would have happened. And because World War I was even while we will say, yeah, the same war, World War I was basically a brawl over territory. You had a lot, and reason and when two people fought, well, my allies got to fight. If we would have not gotten involved, Germany and the Allied powers would have come to a treaty, and that'd have been it. And then you would have never had the rise of Hitler, which means that we would not have had a World War II. So therefore, we would have good chance that in an alternate history, United States would not have survived the Depression. If we did, we would have limped on and not been the country we are today. That is, I mean, there are countless things where historians write this stuff. World War I, we got so involved in it so late, we were really only in the fighting point less than a year. And then when we jumped in, we basically helped push the Allies forward.
So you're doing something that I tell the children that come to the Pirate Museum that they should do, because it makes the learning and understanding of history much more enjoyable or entertaining. And that is to look at, if this didn't happen, would this have happened? If this happened, did it cause this? To look at the timeline of history makes history much more interesting to understand and much more interesting to learn. True or false?
True. I'll give you another example. Today, we were talking about after the Reconstruction, the birth of, as we started, we're getting into civil rights. And we were talking a little bit about the Civil War. And a lot of people do not know this, but the Confederate States of America was desperately trying to get England involved in the war. And they were withholding that because we were a number one supplier of cotton for them. If England would have joined in the Civil War would have been much different, because England would have brought with it, England was still one of the greatest armies at that time, and they would have brought with it its resources. And so I would say,
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
But,
I know we keep going off on tangents, but this is the great thing about this show. I love this. So go ahead.
England would have come in, and drastically the Civil War could have been much different. It could have dragged on for a little bit longer. Gettysburg would have been completely different. So England not joining in the Civil War meant that eventually the North would defeat the Confederacy, because the Confederacy was running out of supplies and ability.
But the French got involved in the Civil War.
Yeah, but it's French. No.
All right, we're completely in a different time zone now. Let's
get back to Pearl Harbor.
You know what? We could have an entire episode where you and I just talk about history, because we both love it. It's in your blood because it's in my blood, and so your students that are still watching, they need to understand this. Your lineage through your dad goes all the way back to the 1700s here in Florida.
Yeah.
We have been a part of Florida history since the 1700s. Your great, 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 great uncle was the governor of Florida at the turn of the century in 1900. We have other family members that had prominent places in history, the Seminole Indian Wars. And so those are all topics that we need to put on a listing that we can sit and talk about. And I'd love your students to join us and be a part of it.
Yeah.
Especially if they really want to admit that they like history. But let's go back to Pearl Harbor. Let's talk about this point.
Okay.
Pearl Harbor was a surprise to the Navy at Pearl Harbor. It may not have been a surprise to some of the higher echelon of the Navy. True or false?
True. The idea that, again, Japan was going to attack. They knew this was going to happen, and we could get into the schematics that they knew the military had to let it happen, so they knew this would be a war. I don't get into that or actually subscribe to that theory. I think that goes into a whole different idea. But there were areas that they said, well, Japan's going to attack us. They're going to attack us here. And everyone really believed Midway was going to be the point. And eventually Midway becomes a battle and a turning point in the Pacific theater. But no one thought Pearl Harbor. The idea behind Pearl Harbor is, how are you going to bomb? The water's too shallow. You can't drop torpedoes. You'd have to, the planes would have to take off from there was, no one thought it could happen. And then it did. So what they did was pretty much the impossible. That some people had Pearl Harbor on the list, and there was evidence to the point that they were looking at Pearl Harbor, like Japanese tourists asking departure times of ships and stuff like that. They have that on record. But no one really took it serious that really Pearl Harbor could be the place that Japan would attack. Why? It's not the base is there, but it was not a state of the United States. And it was a destination point for many Japanese that would visit. A lot of the Pacific culture was there. So why attack it? Midway is an actual base. Just take out the base. But instead, they went after Pearl Harbor.
So here's a point for you. Has your mother ever told you the significance of Misawa Air Base, Japan to Pearl Harbor?
No.
All right.
She may have, but I may have not been listening. I tend to do that sometimes.
Your mother and I met in Misawa Air Base, Japan.
Okay.
That's where we got married.
I thought you meant Okinawa.
No. Misawa Air Base, Japan. All right. There's a portion of Misawa Air Base. There's a lake that's part of the base. The lake has the same look from the air as Pearl Harbor. There's a hill next to the lake. There was a building built on that hill. The building is the primary purpose of the building was that it housed electronics for listening in on radio waves all over the world.
Yeah.
The shape of the building on the hill was a similar shape to United States aircraft carriers. So they practiced bombing Pearl Harbor with dummy bombs and the Zero airplanes. Yeah, Zeros. That's what the Japanese had.
Yeah, Zero.
They practiced bombing Pearl Harbor at Misawa Air Base, Japan, for over a year before they took on Pearl Harbor. That's the history of Misawa Air Base, Japan, which is an American air base now.
Well, I knew they had practice and they had trying to find ways. Like one of the things they had to do was they fitted their torpedoes on the Zeros with wooden propellers to help. So when the torpedo went into the water, it didn't just like go straight down and hit. It would hit with that wooden propeller and buoy out, so it would actually attack.
So it stayed. So, it was they were surface torpedoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would.
So
yeah, and drop.
Can you talk about Okinawa's involvement in World War II? I got to live there when Dad was stationed there in 68, 69. We visited Suicide Cliff. Do you know anything about that? I don't know anything about Suicide Cliff. I can't answer that one.
I don't know, but I mean, now I'm interested, so I'm going to write myself a note. And
so
that'll be something
Okinawa was Japanese owned, so I'm sure it was a Japanese training base for the attack on Pearl Harbor and the training because the Japanese were planning on sending airplanes all the way to the West Coast. I mean,
yeah.
And this may sound really funny and off key, but there's a movie John Belushi was in called 1941. It's entirely a farce, entirely a comedy, but it was based on the idea that the Japanese were coming to California.
It's one of his best works.
Yes, it is. It's really one of his best works. So, do you know how many people died at Pearl Harbor?
I've got it right here.
Let me ask you this: Have you been to Hawaii? Have you?
No.
You haven't done. See, I have. I have been to Hawaii, but I've never been to the Pearl Harbor Memorial.
I haven't. It's on. It's eventually. It's on the bucket list of one day wanting to do. I think we're planning hopefully for Scotland this summer. That's trying to do and go see some of the ancestral homeland. I'd like to do that. I'd like to be. That's always been my number one goal. Try that. So hopefully.
I'll tell you this: if you put it off to 2025, I'll go with you.
We'll have to look at who knows what could happen right now with everything going on. But 2,400 personnel were killed in Pearl Harbor. This includes soldiers, sailors, civilians. There were 1,100 wounded. Japanese, of course, lost 29 aircrafts and 5 submarines. And they lost 129 soldiers. So we did fight back. And I've been researching this a lot, and I've found counting the stories of some of these heroics. Some of the soldiers and civilians that fought back during the attack.
So one of the
You're
notes.
correct, Miguel. You're correct.
What's that?
I see one of my students, Miguel. He put the number of people that passed away, and I say Miguel's correct. I'm going to put a
Very
star
good,
beside your name,
So
Miguel.
he should get extra. He wants a picture with Santa, but he should get extra credit for that. So here's another point. The entire attack was not much more than 1 hour long.
1 hour long, and there were
14 minutes.
Yeah, and there were three waves planned, but only two happened.
Right, and the captain, and I'm reading my notes here too, sent the coded message "Tora Tora Tora" to the Japanese fleet after flying over Oahu to indicate the Americans had been caught by surprise.
Yes.
So,
yes. And they went with the first wave, complete surprise. The second one hit the airfields that they didn't think would hit. The third one, the reason they were going to do that third one, but the reason they didn't, and is quoted in history as saying that we've lost the element of surprise, and there's no way we could do a third wave, and so they stopped. If they might have gotten more damage done with the third wave, but by that point, the United States had scrounged what planes they could, and they were in the air, ready to fight back, and they fought back pretty viciously.
In my notes, because I'm doing on this screen, and I have other notes popping up, your comment about the Lease Act,
yeah,
which FDR had already put into place. So even if the Japanese had not attacked Pearl Harbor, we would have gotten involved in the war anyway.
I think eventually it was a decide whose side are we going to have to, who are we going to declare war on first? Because again, the Germans were at the gates of England.
Yes.
They were bombing them. And it was pretty much how much, the question was, how long do they hold on, and can they hold on without the American help? Just Japan hit first. And it's always funny because while Japan and Germany were allies, it's one of the strangest allied forces saying they didn't, because Japan didn't really send anybody into Europe to fight. And once the Germany was defeated, England and France said, see you later. Because they never declared war really on Japan. The only we declared war on Japan, and that's why Germany had to declare war on us, because they're ally. Germany could have said, we're not declaring war, and it could have just been a fight between Japan and the United States. But I think that's part of Hitler's, ego of trying to conquer the whole world.
The United States of America was the only country in all of the countries of World War II that were fighting the Second World War on two fronts.
Well, Russia did. Well, I would say this. Russia did. They came in at the end. We kind of cut them a deal, and they showed up towards the end. But by then, we were already getting ready to drop the bomb. You can't really say how much Russia did. You could make the argument that Germany was fighting a war on two fronts, because they were fighting Russia in the east, and they were fighting England and France on the west. So they were definitely fighting a war on two fronts. And Hitler.
All right, I'll give you that. You're absolutely right. Germany started the whole thing with their invasion of Poland, and they created the two fronts that they had. But Germany had the power to fight those two fronts. We didn't necessarily have the power to fight those two fronts.
Not so much. In fact, that's why the Pacific theater suffered a little, even after the ships go down. Japan was still making a lot of gains in the Pacific theater. If it hadn't been for the Navajo talkers, the wind talkers,
right,
with their code, Japan would have probably put more of a hurting, and we would have been more of a deadlock. We kind of put a lot more focus into the Europe theater, and when that happened, that's where as we talked last time, D-Day, Eisenhower, they came up with this plan, and they knew they had to get a foothold to stop Germany. Once Germany fell, everything got turned over into Japan, and it was like throwing on a light switch all of a sudden and watching the cockroaches scatter. Kind of thing. Like America threw everything into the Pacific theater.
Battle.
Yeah, and it changed. It changed drastically. You start having Iwo Jima, and they stopped the island hopping, because that's how Japan was winning. There was no real plan, you can kind of say. They just kept hopping the islands as quick as they could, and then they would have these elaborate tunnels and bunkers throughout the island that made it hard for them to fight, that we wouldn't see again till Vietnam, and even a little bit in Korea.
So you mentioned Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima is a visual patriotic enthusiasm. That's not the right word I want to use, but Iwo Jima and the fight of Iwo Jima and the Marines raising the flag and everything, that image went back to the United States and revitalized the patriotic nature of the country, and gave the Congress the fortitude that knew that their constituents wanted to back this all the way to the end. Yeah, I believe that was Iwo Jima's purpose.
Iwo Jima was when you add Midway and then Iwo Jima into the whole story, and I would have to say also Doolittle's raid on Tokyo.
Yes.
Doolittle raid showed that we could. It barely made a dent in Japan, but it showed Japan that we could get there, and we could be right at your doorsteps. And I think that kind of scared them a little bit. Like, holy cow, here they made it to us. And then when we won Midway, because at this point Japan is throwing in, and Japan had better planes than we did. The Zeros had better maneuverability. They could fight, and at the end of the day, the Japanese did something that we didn't do a lot of times. If they ran out of fuel, they believed that an honorable death was suicide, the kamikaze. And that's a hard, when someone's that willing to die for their cause, that's the idea. That's a hard thing to take down.
It's the same thing that's going on and has been going on in these Middle Eastern wars. You have these people that believe that an honorable death is a smart thing. So Lisette Avalise, before I answer her question, I got to tell her, if you don't tell her or talk to her, there's a street in St. Augustine called Avalise. And Pedro Menendez, the founder of St. Augustine, is from de Avalise, Spain. So share some of that information with her.
All right.
But she asked how many bombs.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, we're talking about the atomic bombs,
There were
that
two.
would be 2. Yeah, we threatened 3, but we didn't have 3. So we threatened one and said, "Hey, here you go. We're going to drop it." They didn't believe us. We dropped it, gave them a chance, dropped the second one, and by that point, if they hadn't bought the idea that we had a third one, I think the only thing left was going to have to do a ground invasion of Japan, which would have been the worst thing ever.
So it was Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And both of those really took the morale of the Japanese people, and the Emperor of Japan, the Emperor of Japan was really being controlled by his military leaders. They were telling him what they should do, what they shouldn't do. And so the emperor was abiding by them. But when the bombs dropped, the emperor actually then rescinded to the idea that his people were more important than the war.
Yeah. And
So,
if you know about Japanese culture, they view their emperor at that time. They were viewing their emperor as a god.
yes.
And they would fight to the death for him. That's
Well,
why
there's
there's something.
That's why they're kamikazes.
I'm going to say there's something almost poetic, if that's a good word to use, like of that honor system, of we will defend and we will defend. And I think that we've seen a lot of soldiers in our own military that is their mindset. We will defend with our last breath. There's something very much. I mean, to be able to sit there and say that this is what we're going to do. We're not talking, and some of these, not just military. There was the honor. It would have been civilians fighting to the death.
That is a patriotism that is born of pride.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with it. And Nightingale in Florida brings up a really good point. The U.S. dropped pamphlets over all of Japan warning that they were going to drop the bomb. It's just, let's bring it to modern day times now. I know we keep jumping around, but that's the greatness of this. And I hope your students are learning something. But look at what the Israelis did in the Hamas area in Gaza. They dropped pamphlets. They let them know this is what we're going to do. There's a certain amount of humanitism in doing that. We did it to the Japanese. The Israelis have done it to Palestinians. It's not the first time. There are some other times in American history that we have done that in other countries and let them know we're coming. If you don't want to be a part of this, please leave. We don't want to hurt you. We just want to get rid of the people that are causing the problems. Yeah. And so, and it's happened. And I won't quote dates and locations, but we've done it before in other countries. It is a point that shows that a government is mindful of the people. Yeah. And the United States has always been mindful of the people, but so was the Japanese. The Japanese were mindful of their own people, especially the emperor, but they believed they could win the war.
Yeah. And when MacArthur pretty much kind of oversaw Japan after the war, there was a lot of talk about whether or not to arrest the emperor and hold him for war crimes. MacArthur believed that if they did that, we would never get back Japan. We learned our lesson after World War I. In fact, we knew the lesson. The rest of Europe kind of didn't. After World War I, Germany was what was left, and so everybody else just wanted to beat it into submission, which made it easy for Hitler to leave. MacArthur knew if we did that to Japan, then we would be setting ourselves up for another conflict years down the road with Japan. And if you look at Japan today, is one of our strongest friendships and allies. We went back in there and we helped rebuild and did programs and everything with Japan. And we've got a very strong relationship with Japan now, and shared technology. So
everything that we've done, Pearl Harbor was not the catalyst, but it was the fuse that brought us into everything we know as Second World War.
Well, as I like to say, there's an old story, old myth that they say Winston Churchill, and said that when he heard about the attack of Pearl Harbor, he poured a glass of whiskey, lit a cigar, sat down, and said, "Gentlemen, we've just won the war." And all his advisors are looking at him like, "What are you talking about? America has Pacific fleets decimated. They can't stop Japan. They're never going to get into this." And he goes, "Gentlemen, the United States is like a kettle. Once you light a fire under it, there's no telling how hot it's going to get." And sure enough, we just kept that progression. And I think that is something that we have to remember, especially when we hit these times and hard times where we think, well, what does America mean? Stuff like that. We are, in many ways, we are this world leader, and we are whether we were destined to be, or whether just by circumstance we are, and we need to kind of act like that. We need to show, and sometimes we have to lead that, we have to say, here's what we go. We got to work towards this. And I think sometimes we do a great job of that.
Sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. I mean,
Sometimes I scratch my head.
it gives me a thought. You know what? I'm going to research. You need to research it, because Winston Churchill was probably, in my opinion, and you can charge me bad if you want, but I think Winston Churchill was probably one of the greatest leaders of the Second World War, because of his philosophy, because of his ideas. Now, he wasn't always a good boy.
No.
No. But because of his concepts of world leadership, which he attained at this point in time, he really was very important to the outcome of all these things.
I think as a country leader,
and you can argue with the negative if you want. You are my son. I'm not going to worry.
Well, I mean, you make a very good point. I mean, I'm always going to turn to Eisenhower as probably the greatest. I mean, just because of what he did. But you could sit there and I could sit there and say, well, Eisenhower was military at this time. Winston Churchill was a diplomat.
Yeah,
and he was having to deal with things more on a world stage, where Eisenhower was like, all right, I'm a military guy. Here's the plan. Here's what we got to do. But I think honestly, then Eisenhower becomes remarkably and a really good president. I mean,
because he became a diplomat.
Yeah. So I would always have to argue that Eisenhower is probably, and that's in my opinion, for what he did and what he accomplished. And Eisenhower is the one that needs to be remembered as a leader. But it doesn't happen without the heads of countries like FDR. And I'm not one who will always agree with everything about FDR.
No.
But I think he did I think he was the right man to lead at that time. And I think people are put in history. The leaders are put in history at exactly the right time we need them to lead us through drastic, sometimes disasters, and to pull us through. And sometimes they're not always remembered favorably, because sometimes they make decisions that are not going to be looked at, but in the long run, it's like I always tell some students, you may not like me when you're in my class, but you give it a couple of years and you'll see that I was right.
I'll take that analogy one step further, and you may not fall in this category, but you remember Grandpa Barnes?
Yeah.
There are a lot of times where I'll make a comment or say something or do something, and then I go, damn, I sound just like my dad. It happens. It may not happen for you because our relationship has been different and strained, but we learn from our ancestors. We step into the shoes of our ancestors, and the First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War, even this war that's going on in Iran, and even the war that's going on in the Middle East. These are all things that, if your students are still listening, everything that's happening right now has happened before in variations. And the understanding and the knowledge of history is what is supposed to keep us from making some of the same mistakes.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing in Ukraine that was happening in the Second World War. We were providing help, we were providing money, providing equipment, but we're not involved yet.
Yeah.
And I hope, I truly, as a prior military person, I really, truly hope we don't get involved. I hope that we can help them along to do what they need to do. And I think it'll be okay. It's the same thing that's going in the Middle East. I have a very close friend that is a Jewish rabbi. You know, that's probably a redundant word to use both in the same sentence, right? So, but he's a rabbi, and we've been very good friends for years. And all of these things that are happening, I've called him during COVID. He used to call me to make sure we were doing okay during COVID. Now, during all this problem going on, I've called him to make sure he's okay during all this, because I just think that we have to pay attention to some of the things around us.
Yeah.
So let's do this.
All right.
My goodness, we've been talking for 45 minutes. It seems like a short time. I'm going to tell your students, because there's still some of them that are watching. I learned Vic CR7. I like learning about World War II. Ms. Q, I did a project on Pearl Harbor, and it was so interesting. I'm glad you did, because history is interesting. And it seems like you got some pretty good students.
I've got some really good students. I got some rambunctious students. I got some. We've been having, I teach right now. I'm teaching civics. I teach civics, so government, and we've been trying to do some interesting. I don't know if you saw the video, but I rapped "Supply and Demand." I rapped the "Supply and Demand" song the other day in class. I'm gonna
have to go look for it or send me the link. I want to see it.
I rapped that, and I'm not gonna lie, that was really out of my comfort zone trying to rap. I looked exactly like it would, like a middle-aged white man rapping a song would look like. It was me, but we've been doing some interesting things like that, and we're going to be doing our civil rights and how the government works civil rights. So I got some great when they are, and I'm going to be honest with them because they know I've always told them I will never not be honest with them. I might make a couple jokes at them, but I never not honest. When they are in that and they're asking questions and they are in class and they're responding and everything, I think that's some of the best classes when I could see that they are really, and the fact that they all got supply and demand, that made me real happy. They understand supply and demand. So, let's send them out into the workforce. So, I think it'll be all right.
It's not World War II, and I know we bounced on and off about it, but the joy for me is just having a conversation for your students. Having a conversation with my son is a huge joy. This is going to be one of my favorite, aside from the D-Day one, this is going to be one of my favorite shows. But I want to share something with you. And then you tell me if I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll accept it from my son. But I tell all the students that come into the Pirate Museum when we talk about pirate history, doesn't matter what the history is. Nothing we know about history prior to the invention of recording devices and camera equipment, nothing is absolute. Everything is based on the written word. And the written word is biased. Biased is not racist. Biased means that it's just written or drawn or artistically done in the eye of that person. There's nothing wrong with that. But we take the diary or the letters from home or the presidential speeches or the newspaper clippings or the magazine articles or the whatever. We take all those pieces. It's like a picture puzzle. We put it all together, but it's not going to have all the pieces in that puzzle. And we have to use three things to come up with how we might be able to fill those pieces in. Those three things are the understanding of human nature, the understanding of common sense, and we can use scientific. And if we use those things and piece it all together, we can come up with an idea of how history actually happened. But is it still absolute? Never. Because there's no such thing as a time machine. We can't go back, like H.G. Wells said, and say, hey, that's wrong. So we have to be open-minded about what we know. Based on that fact, I am, as a historian, and I hope you are too, I am okay with people disagreeing with me and having a conversation, because the act of a disagreement should be the opening of a door to have a conversation. The act of a disagreement should never be violence. And that's what I tell everybody when I talk about history.
Yeah. I will agree on the point that I do believe there are certain things that are set in fact in stone. And I love people having opinions based off, like what we were talking about. if America had never gotten involved in World War I. I think those are great discussions. There are some things, and I'll give you a story tonight, right now, that I really had to bite my tongue this weekend on, because there's certain things that are fact, and you go, how do you know how to Google? How could you not get this answer? We were at a little get together that Lauren did something for. It was called a celebration of trees, where all the city schools in the area decorated a Christmas tree. And so we went to this thing and got recognized, and I went with her, and the guy gets up there and he's telling this story, the history. And first of all, he starts talking about how Germany was the first people to put a Christmas tree in the homes. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm going, no, the Vikings were, but we'll let it go.
So were the pagans of England.
Pagan of England. That's, and I'll tell you something I'm working on about between the Celtics and the pagans. And then when he asked the question with who celebrated Christmas in the United States, who celebrated Christmas as a first celebrated Christmas as a holiday, and I said Alabama, and everyone kind of laughed at me. He's like, no, President Grant, and I was like, and I really wanted to go and just stop this and go, first of all, Alabama, when it became a state in 1819, 20 years later, was the first state to recognize Christmas as a holiday. All right. 1870 is when the U.S. government decided, hey, we can make it a federal holiday. So Alabama, once again, leading the country, started this. And it really, I think even Lauren could see that I was a little bit, it took a lot for me not saying, but it was not the time and place for me to do that kind of thing. But there are things, and you can ask some people, I get very passionate about when someone's got something wrong, and sometimes I can be a little bit bad about it, correcting people. I think that is a fault I have to work on sometimes. I agree that we should have disagreements, and I agree that we should have discussion about how things played out, especially when we don't have all the information. That's the fun of speculation. But there are times when I'll sit there and go, all right, as a teacher, there's some things that are just here's the black and white of it, and you got to know this. Like Earth, don't get me started on Earth, flat earthers.
So let me throw this in about Santa Claus, because we're talking about history.
Okay.
A part of the Santa Claus history comes from the Netherlands.
Yes.
And the idea was Sinterklaas. That was the name, Sinterklaas, which was St. Nicholas. And then over time in the 1800s, like you said, in the 1800s, it got smoothed out to Santa Claus. Sinterklaas was the Dutch Netherlands word for Santa Claus. And in the American history, it got smoothed out to Santa Claus. So you're absolutely right. There are certain things that come into play with all this that I know we've gone so far off of Pearl Harbor. But here's the other thing I want your students to understand, those that are still watching. And this is the one thing I'm totally adamant about. And even my son, if you want to argue with me, I'll argue with you. But I'm adamant about this. Yeah, right. We live in the greatest country in the world. You are entitled to your words, your thought, your opinion, and your beliefs. If they are different from mine, it should not matter. It should be the actual bridge that lets us chat. It should not be the bridge of violence. And I firmly, totally agree with that. And I will argue that with anybody, including my own blood. But that is very important, because that's how we understand and agree and learn from history. Comment yourself, my son. Go ahead.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, in class, we just spent weeks talking about with like today, civil liberties and the Bill of Rights, and that the fact that we're a country of civil liberties, or we have our right for freedom of expression and thought, and to be who we want to be and laws to prevent the government from taking that away from us. And that is beauty. And we should. And as I tell, as I was telling a story to my student the other day, is I had a friend a couple years ago. We lived next door to each other in Huntsville. And what we did was we were talking when a lot of stuff was happening around Ferguson, Missouri and stuff like that. We were having conversations. And he, as a black man, was telling me what it was like to get pulled over in the middle of the night. This fear of being pulled over by cops in the middle of the night. I could not relate to that, but I could listen and try to understand where he was coming from, like he could listen to me, understand. And that developed a really good friendship between us, that we had these amazing discussions. We never saw eye to eye on a lot of things, but we never actually got mad at each other, because what we did was we shared our beliefs and how we looked at things. All right. And that's the beauty. And I think that, and as I told my students one day, one of the issues that we have in our government, and I got a little, and I have to catch myself, I don't want to always do it. One of the issues I saw in our government is that we have all these people that don't listen to each other. And
Right.
so we're having more arguments than real conversations happening. And we see it in our home lives. We see it everywhere. We're not listening to another. We have our set. And if you don't believe what I believe, well, then, you must hate me or something like that. And that's not true. Sometimes we just don't understand each other because we're not talking to each other. And one of the things I tell my students is, if you learn anything from me, is that when you become an adult, you have to stand on your own beliefs, not somebody else's beliefs. And you got to be able to stand up for those beliefs, whatever it is, and never back down from them. But at the same time, be malleable, be able to be open to being able to change. The William McRea of today is not the same William McRea when he was 18 years old. I learned a lot.
Or when William McRea Sr. was 16 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I have learned a lot, and part of that is through my experiences of meeting people and traveling and getting to understand the world around. I don't always agree, and I don't always say, well, that's great if you believe that. But I respect it. And I think that's the thing. I think the key is, and it goes with history, we have to respect each other. We have to find a way to respect each other. Japan and the United States really did not respect each other by the time World War II happened. And there was not a lot of respect going on anywhere in the world. We were very much, well, here's your German here. When all this said and done, I think we found a way to respect each other. And we're finding a way to live with each other, to work with each other. And I think that there is people in this world that need to remember that. And that's just my 2 cents on it.
Well, your 2 cents is worth more than 2 cents. Hey, Davey, Nightingale in Florida, about 3 comments up, made a really good statement. Can you put that up there? Best teachers. You see that one? The best teachers teach how to think, not what to think. And from everything I see, and this is a testament to my son, from everything I see watching his classes and his Facebook and some of his students online here, I think he opens that door for them to think. And that's important. And Gene, open mind, open hearts, respect. Absolutely. I mean, there is nothing worse than a disrespect, but a disrespect is, respect comes from a mutual acceptance to that. I want to listen to what you say. As long as you understand, I don't have to believe it, but I want you to listen to what I say, and I don't expect you to believe it. And in that time, we can have a mutual understanding, because some of the things that you said tonight about certain things with World War II, I didn't have it. I believed in World War II from an old guy's point of view, and you've studied it from a different point of view, and there's a difference of opinion. But both of those opinions came to a convergence that we do believe. The main facts of World War II, we were drawn into it whether we wanted to or not, but we were going to be a part of World War II. True or false?
True.
we gained superiority, and I don't mean that to be a negativity, because some people think superiority, ooh. We gained a superiority in the world stage as a world leader by our actions in World War II. True or false?
True, and plus our actions after the war.
Right. So these things, World War II propelled the United States of America to become a world power. You actually said that earlier, and that's a true statement, correct? So the things that are happening, the things that happened back then, the things that are happening now erode away at our world power, because people have a false sense of expectance when it comes to the things that are happening. I mean, and this is not a political assassination of the things that are going on now against certain people. This is a civics lesson. You will agree to that, right? We're talking civics. We're not talking politics. But as the United States needs to become more cohesive and stand against the things that we as a country believe in, we can't be wishy-washy about the way we do it.
I would say, yeah, when we're wishy-washy or we don't have a firm stance, that's when throughout history, great nations have fallen. And you can look at everything from Greek to Rome, you know, what was going, where were they at? So Bella,
how does the legislative branch affect us?
They make me, I'll tell you right now, they make me pay taxes out of my paycheck, Bella. We've talked about this.
I like her.
I like her.
Bella, I will say Bella is definitely one of my most interesting students because she always has something to say, and it's got to the point where I've said she needs to start writing all her thoughts in a book so that we could publish it one day. I think that she's one who she loves to share all her thoughts, and so it's a very good it's a personality that you don't see a lot of times. But she's asking good questions, and the legislature, because we vote on the legislation and then they ignore us and make laws sometimes. I'm joking. No, the legislative branch helps out. Mr. McRea helps us out.
So let's see. Antonio says he helps us a lot, Mr. McRea. He is a teacher who teaches things that we need to know and helps us understand better. So I'm thinking that put that back up there real quick, Davey. He said Mr. McRea, so he's addressing me.
I don't know. I'm going to work on that. One thing they haven't figured out my school's spelling. I keep getting the wrong spelling of my name, but
that's all right. Antonio, you keep asking him questions, and you always make sure that you are in discussion with him. Mandy Joe says, Bellaray, the legislative branch makes all laws, declares war, regulates interstate and foreign commerce, and controls taxing and spending policies. That's why we don't like them.
Make laws, declare war, budget.
Yep, that's it.
Wait, let me ask this: out of all my students, what does it take to override a presidential veto? Let's see if any of y'all get that in the comments. All right, because we went over that drastically when you talk about the legislative branch. But I have really great students. And sometimes around this time of year, they get a little ready for that winter break, kind of crazy, like, let's have fun and everything. They're still good kids. I still have a lot of good kids, and I tell them all the time that sometimes when I have to be a little bit stern, it's not because I don't care. It's because I know how smart they are, and I want them to use their brain. They can use their brain. These are seventh graders. Seventh graders.
Never, ever suppress them. Those questions, Antonio, Lisette, Bellaray. Sorry, Bellaray. I see Miss Q. I love all of their input into our show. I hope they will continue to watch our show.
They're a good bunch of group. They're a
And
good
you know
bunch
what?
of kids.
I'll make a deal with you, Will the historian.
Oh boy.
We'll put some things in the shows over the next couple of weeks or months. Davey, what's going on? The cat.
Yep.
Will the historian, if you want to put some things in our show that you're pardon me, this cough has been irritating me for a week. You want to put some stuff in the show that your students have to maybe watch the show and can watch the show and get something out of it and get an extra credit for it? I would love to have all the sponsors and followers of our show.
I think we can
Maybe
work
we
on
can
something.
put a secret hint in there somewhere.
Go. I mean, I always tell them I'm going to start my own podcast and have them listen to it. I think I might teach them how to do a podcast for a project next semester.
So Bella Ray says a veto can be overridden by a vote of the Senate. Is she right?
I will give her part. I will say partially. You got part of it right, Bella. You got part of it right. Yeah. Part of it right.
It appears.
So that's good. She's, as I always say when they get that close, I said, you've hit it in the ballpark. You're on third base. All right. So I'll use baseball analogy a lot.
Nightingale in Florida has given you a great compliment. You have a great group of students, and I'm sure every year you have a great group of students. So I hope that they continue on and do what you want to do and be a part of what you're doing.
I'm a very blessed
Santa
Claus. I'm a very blessed teacher. I'm very blessed to get to work in a career that I think the best careers are the ones that cause you stress because you are so passionate about what you're doing with everybody else. And there are times that, I can get very stressful, but because I want to see all these kids succeed. And some of my favorite stories is when I hear, like just recently, a favorite student of mine from a couple years ago. I shouldn't say favorite; they're all my favorites. But she had learned that she was part Cherokee, and was trying to learn about her family heritage. And so we contacted some university professors and got her some right thing. And now found out she's living in Tucson, Arizona.
Really?
Yeah, she moved out to Tucson, Arizona. She's becoming a flight attendant, but taking some classes. She wants to get a degree in history. And that makes me so I was real proud to hear from her. So I've been checking up on her lately and just see how she's doing. I got students who are already believe it or not, I got students who have just graduated college. Some of my first students have graduated college now.
Didn't you have a student that went on to Olympic wrestling?
Working on it. He just graduated and he was a college wrestler. His goal, I think, is I still think we'll see him in the wrestling in Olympics. I know he's coaching wrestling now. So
see, and this is why, and so your students can pay attention if they want. This is why I'm proud of my son, because my son is molding young people and creating a good base for American citizens. And I think everything you do is wonderful. I follow everything. Your students need to know that I watch what you do, and I see those students, and I watch your comments when you make these silly comments about students that ask for extra credit. And so I follow my son religiously. He doesn't know it either, but I do follow. And I'm very proud. And to have these conversations on my podcast that includes not only my son, but his students means that maybe I'm getting to make a difference too, but I'm getting to have fun with my son.
Yeah. And
that's important to me. So Bella Ray says, veto, we already saw that.
Yes, Lisette, you are very interesting.
Smart. And me, I'm very interesting too. I bet you are, Lisette. I bet you're very
interesting. Lisette is they are interesting, and when you get to know your students, like I just had to rework my teacher philosophy which is kind of funny. It's something we do in college, and then we have to turn around and, you revisit everyone. I just did my teach philosophy, and my teach philosophy has completely changed from when I was in college. And one of the things I try to do, and I guarantee they would probably sit there and say that I don't, but they don't even realize I do it, is one of my points is be curious. Learn. And when you're curious and you actually listen, they don't even know that I listen to all their little conversations sometimes. Some of them do because I have to stop some of their conversations, but I list all their so I can actually kind of get to know some of the things they're saying and what they're doing. And then it shocks them. Like I will surprise them like with some bit of knowledge about their life that they didn't even know I knew. And it kind of shocks them. So I'm always curious and trying to learn about them. I think the best thing to do is to learn about your students. And that way, maybe, if you mess up, then you know how to fix it. So, and teachers can mess up. I'm not going to lie. We can mess up. That's one thing. Failure is a part of life. But the thing I want them to always see is that failure was not the end.
Mr. McRea is a really smart and intellectual teacher, intelligent teacher. He has teach lots of interesting things to me. I'll let the English go.
Well, I hope I teach civics. I want you guys to remember that because in less than about a week, you guys got your civics final, which is basically the citizenship test of the United States. So I'm going to see what they remember and learn.
Well, your students may not understand, but there's a certain amount of attachment that I have to you, even though our lives have been distant, and the proud concept I have of what you do, and these students prove it. You have them, and you're doing a wonderful job, and that's the important part of everything a teacher should be. I have a lot of teacher friends here in St. Augustine, and we do a lot of charity work for the teachers here. And I just think teachers are some of the most important people in the world because, and I tell the students in my tours that the teachers are the most important concept of their life. And I can still tell you my first, second, third, and fourth grade teachers' names. And that's back in the 60s. I can still tell you their names. Mrs. Hall, Mrs. Burnett, Mrs. Johnson. I'll have problems with the fourth grade. But you remember your teachers because it's important. Right?
Yes, I can. I think I honestly think I could probably name every single teacher I've ever had. If I actually sat down and did it, I could probably do it. Because I'm sitting here just going in the head right now, from all the way from kindergarten all the way to senior year of high school. So Bella Ray just actually put a post up there too that said, I'm going to leave that one alone.
No, put it up there. Also taught me that someone actually landed on the moon.
Oh, Bella, don't bring up this conversation again.
Come on. No, you know what? There are a lot of people that don't believe that happened.
Bella. I think the actual conversation went, you believed we had landed on the moon, but you believed that we had not been in space yet, and I had to correct that.
Okay.
Because
Look,
and that was, and here's the thing, that was one of my first conversations with Bella. And that's what I knew. All right, Bella's gonna ask me some questions that's gonna make me stop in my tracks, and this is going to be fun. And I was like, again, Bella, and I can see right now, I can see Bella rolling her eyes at me. I can see it happening right now. But she's a great student, and she's got a lot of potential, just like all my students. They all have a lot of potential. As I say, they're the alpha class. They're the alpha generation.
Yeah. I like what Vic CR7 said. Davey, can you pop that up there? Mr. McRea, you are a great teacher. You taught me some things in your class. Hey, some things is better than nothing.
Yeah, they do. They do surprise. They always make me think they haven't learned anything, but then they will surprise me on a test. So,
And Lisette says you're her favorite teacher.
thank you, Lisette. Still not going to say who my favorite student is.
Now they're all trying to kiss butt. They want extra credit. What was the cause of World War II, and what countries fought in World War II? All right.
Well,
so is Ryan one of your students?
Ryan is one of these great student athletes. Ryan works
Davey, put that
really,
question
really
back
hard.
up there, because I want to address it myself. What was the cause of World War II? The cause of World War II was a particular country, and my son can correct me, but a particular country, primarily Hitler and the Nazis, wanted to exterminate an entire class of people, at the same time controlling a financial empire. That is the basic fundamental idea of World War II. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I will say yeah. But I would throw in there, not just Hitler and army. I mean, what allowed Hitler to rise as he did, and that has to do with the event. That has to do with the Treaty of Versailles after World War I, where they split Germany into 4 parts, and during the beating, it made it very easy for Hitler to come in and give these speeches. And literally in his speeches, what he says is, God wants Germany to be a great country, and we're going to do this and this. He promised everyone having jobs, money, food, and Hitler delivered. I mean, Hitler knew what he was doing. He was an extremely intelligent man. That is okay. That is not wrong to say that Hitler was there. The truth is, most people that are certifiably insane are very intelligent.
True.
And he did everything that he said he was doing. And when he got so much power, the government was so scared of him that they made him second in command. And then when you throw in that, you have also the rest of Europe not putting a stop to Hitler in the beginning with appeasement. They just let him take this and let him do that. And he allowed stuff to happen. And by the time he took over Poland and started World War II, started the official World War II, he had strategically placed himself in so many places that there was no way to stop him. Why did the U.S. born and say so? What countries fought in World War II? Well, pretty much all of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
The main ones: Japan, Italy, and Germany made up the bulk of the Axis powers, along with small countries like Palestine and other areas. But then for Allied powers, United States, Canada, Australia, France, Great Britain, Russia, China was in the Allied powers, believe it or not. India got involved in that. So there was a lot more countries on the Allied side than there was the Axis side.
So there's 2 questions that come up. Davey, why did the U.S. bomb Japan? It was a show of force to try to establish an end to the war. That was really the reason why Hiroshima and Hiroshima actually happened. It needed to be done so that it would prove to the Japanese we had the power to stop it. True or false, William?
I will say true. And then you have to add the idea behind a ground invasion, because this is something that we don't debate in my class now because it's 7th grade, but when I taught high school, this was a topic we debated, and I let the students spend a day or two creating their argument. And the idea was they would read 2 sides. They would read articles about not bombing Japan and the article for bombing Japan, and they had to come up with their own mind. And most every student always comes up that we had to bomb, because the idea of a ground invasion would have been millions of deaths on both sides.
Well, you have to prove your superiority. And when you prove your superiority, you have to do it in the most forceful way. The most forceful way was the A-bomb. So, Davey, there's another one that Nightingale put up there. Hitler not only. You see that one?
Yes, Hitler not only wanted to exterminate Jews. I firmly believe in that. If Hitler and the Germans would have won the war and Japan would have defeated us, it would have been a matter of time before Germany turned on Japan and tried to get rid of them.
And they wanted to oppress anything that was not Protestant.
Yeah.
By virtue of the fact they wanted to get rid of the Catholic priests too. And they would have attacked. So even though Italy, Mussolini joins in Hitler's fight, if Hitler had won, and this is a speculation, but because of Hitler's beliefs, if Hitler had won, he would have then attacked Italy and then put the Roman Catholic Church at risk.
Well, I mean, he was already on the verge of pretty much taking out Italy. Some of the stuff he did, he kind of left them out to dry towards the end there. And, that's how Mussolini eventually his own people would kill him before we could even get there. Hitler also went after, I mean, we always talk about the Star of David, but there's plenty of symbols like Hitler. We have confirmed reports of Africans that were in concentration camps. If you had Down syndrome or a birth defect, or what we would probably look at is even autism, or they just looked at as mentally ill or mentally handicapped, they would kill them too.
They got rid of everybody.
Not in the great drones or millions that they did with the Jewish people. Because of the way Hitler made the Jewish people out to be the scapegoat and the problem in Mein Kampf. Of course,
your students are popping up with more questions all of a sudden. I love it. So is that a student of yours right there?
Yes, Olivia. Yes.
So
Olivia.
there are 4 events leading up to the bombing of Pearl Harbor that also played a role in the war starting.
Well, the biggest thing was the talks. There was actually Japanese had talks in D.C. and it was all just a show of like, oh, we're going to be friends and everything like that, and try to figure out a way. The sanctions that the U.S. put on the oil and the goods that made it very hard for Japan to get things because Japan didn't have all the natural resources they did. That's part of why they were conquering a lot of the Pacific again, was getting that natural resource. So there was just a lot of show force from Japan.
Great.
I'm looking at all these questions.
Hey, give her at least 1 point for extra credit, all right?
Yeah.
Hey, so all the students watching, I'm telling my son, all of you that have participated in tonight's show need to get extra credit. I'm sanctioning that. It's up to him to decide it's right. What's the difference from Allied powers and the Axis powers? Wow, that's a conversation.
Bella, I can give it to you in summary. Allies won, Axis didn't. There you go.
I like that. That's good.
I like the question above it from Guatemala. Has the USSR ever lost a war? Yes, the Cold War, because they disappeared. The USSR fell apart after that, so they lost that war.
And who made them lose that war?
United States of America.
And what president?
That would have been under Reagan.
Yes.
But Reagan, I would say though you got to throw in Nixon and Kennedy. You got to give them a little credit for some of the talk. They kept the talks open and they did some drastic things with some of the actual fighting that happened. But Reagan was the one who Reagan with Gorbachev ended it.
I'll give Nixon, because I think Nixon was a great president.
I think when you really look at it, I think he was a great president. But if you look at it, I think of new evidence, and this is just kind of like historian hearsay, that Nixon may have actually suffered from schizophrenia paranoia. Like there are talks where
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
He thought people were out to get him.
Yes,
like Kissinger.
I would agree with that. But here's the other thing. I think a great leader is a leader that actually comes to the conclusion that I've reached my point, and it's more honorable to step back than it is to fight. And Nixon is one of those ones. It was honorable for him to resign instead of dragging out the crap.
Yeah, I think so too.
So I believe in that. You've got your students. If you don't give them all extra credit, I'll have to come up there and visit. But they're asking good questions, and I hope. Here's what you should do. They get extra credit, but only half credit because they have to come and watch another show.
I will see what I can do about that.
But I mean, they've asked some great questions, which means that they have a great teacher. Wouldn't you say, Mandy Joe? I know you're busy. Are you talking to somebody?
Yeah.
Bo is customizing flasks because they were running later than normal, so usually we're not still on the air.
I saw your daughter in the show earlier.
Yes, my daughter was having
Is she still
some fun.
there?
She is over by the fridge, so I could actually holler her over. Usually, like I said, she's at dance during all of this. But like listening to this, your students are asking pretty good questions. I find it funny that they switched out from World War II to the Cold War. But
welcome to my classroom.
It's history. You know what, though? You want them to do that. You want them to keep their minds open. One of the biggest failures in the school systems right now is the limitation of education and trying to control what the kids learn and what they think happened rather than getting them to ask the questions and broaden their own mind, because history in school, and you know this because you're a teacher, teaches like a few drops in the bucket of what actually is out there and what's actually happened.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, I mean,
wait, hold on. Ransom Mayhem, your uncle says, will the historian be learning me a few things? I like how Soviet Union, Russian, and U.S. used to be allies. We're still allies.
Well, we were allies in World War II. I wouldn't say we're allies. I say we have a mutual understanding. But, I mean, the big thing is we're NATO and they're not. You know, NATO was created because of, like, Soviet Union, and that's still a sore spot for Russia. And that's we could dive into that all night. I would say that we have a mutual understanding of trying not to destroy the world. Right now is how I would put it.
So here's what I would throw. I'll throw in this to that argument. Putin, who's the number one leader, there are certain other leaders in that situation that are more receptive to us, but they're scared to go against Putin.
Yeah.
If Putin was not around, it might be entirely a different story.
I think that's very, very true. And I was saying a minute ago, this is when the kind of to back on what Mandy was saying a minute ago about education. We still have to have kind of like a structure for things. Like I've got to do state standards, and luckily I'm very lucky that my state standards can lead to a lot of things. But one of the best things is I do try to do what if questions a lot of times and have them use what they're learning for what if. And I do like to let them explore and do some things. Sometimes I say, all right, we got to get this done. We got to go through this, so that we've had this because of certain things. But I think that in civics, it allows for open up for those conversations with the kids. And I try to do fun things with them and try to do out of the box stuff when I can to show that educators, like we do puzzles for like, we'll do like work, or we'll play a lot of games. We'll play some trivia games in class and really work on that and try to work that. And so we try to work that. So yes, I think there are some issues in education. Every teacher will tell you that there is, and that they fix. And one day when I am president of the United States, probably when I'm Joe Biden's age, I will fix it. So
look, I want your
although my wife says I'm not allowed to run for anything but state senator because she doesn't want to be like we watch Designated Survivor, and she doesn't want to be like a presidential widow or something like that.
So I got to ask, is Lauren still watching?
Probably. I don't know.
Lauren, I'm going to tell you, if you're not still watching, it'll be on public TV now. You're the best thing that ever happened to my son. and I'll leave it at that and see if she answers. But she's here. She's here. I see it. I also see my good friend Jean. Her birthday was today, or maybe it was yesterday. I could be wrong. Happy birthday. But we're just getting such great comments and input. And this is what my show is all about. I just want to have conversations and discussions and have fun. And, Mandy Joe. Turn it on.
Yes.
Hello, little Mandy Joe. Don't roll your eyes at me. Hi. Are you coming out to Mermaid in February?
Are you coming with us in February to Florida?
Good. In February, we're doing a pirate festival, and she's going to be a mermaid with me. So
nice.
You be a mermaid again?
When you coming back down, Will the historian?
I'm not sure. That's going to have to be something in the plans, definitely. Now that I'm coaching soccer, starting in February, my life is not my own anymore. We're already practicing and everything like that. So definitely need. I know that. Who knows? We will probably need to get. We have talked about it. We've talked about it and try to think. We really thought about the idea at Christmas time, but we had a bed and breakfast thing in Kentucky that we had to use by the end of the year, so we decided to go to Kentucky instead for a little weekend getaway. I really want to come down for the festival, the Scottish festival, Scottish Games.
March.
That's in March. If soccer's not going on, maybe we can get down there for that. I would love to. I went to a couple of the games here, and I'm like, man, I should really learn to do the caber toss.
Well, let me know, and I'll give you a place to stay. You got great students. I am so thrilled to have your students on the show tonight. I hope they'll stay with us. Every week's different. And if they ask questions, we watch the questions, we watch what's going on, and I will talk to every one of your students. If you want to work out something between your class and what we do, great. But let's make sure we stay within Alabama standards.
Let me ask this question real quick. I was thinking about this. This is my third time on the show. I've done this twice from my classroom, and then once I was, this summer came out. Does that make me the most guests you've had on? Do I hold the title for most guest appearance?
I think so.
All right. I'm like Alec Baldwin with Saturday Night Live.
Yes, you are. And I'm going to put you on more often because we were supposed to talk about Pearl Harbor, but we talked about all kinds of things that were history related.
Yeah.
And
I've been writing a lot of things over the past couple of years. Some strange history I've been investigating from the Jack the Ripper of who I think he really was, all the way to been comparing and seeing that who came first, the Celts or the Vikings, because there's a lot of similar traditions that they have, and there's age-old who was first, or was the Celts.
So
the
here,
Vikings
I'll throw something into your mix. The bagpipe may have been invented by the Spanish.
Oh, and Gene says Vikings. Well, we'll save that for another argument, Gene. Spanish bagpipes.
Look, the northern Spanish were Celtic.
Yeah.
And they migrated and so they may have been some of the first ones to come up with the bagpipe. All I'm concerned with is this. Who thought it was a great idea to blow into a sheep's bladder to make music?
Egyptians is actually the latest theory.
There's another theory.
Some historians believe bagpipes originated from ancient Egypt, where they were brought to Scotland by invading Roman legions.
Here's the other thing I like to always think about. Who thought it was a good idea to put oysters in their mouth the first time?
As someone who doesn't eat oysters, I don't know, and I don't understand that one. So
what? You don't eat oysters?
No, but I tell you what, my wife can eat some oysters.
Good.
She
Bring
loves
her
oysters.
down and you stay home and her and I will eat oysters together.
So that one's actually saying a researcher from Arizona State University is claiming that the earliest tools and stuff to be able to remove oysters came in South Africa.
Hey, I'm sure, but look at all the people that ate squid or raw fish.
Okay, I do that.
Me too.
So does Anara. Salmon's her favorite. She'll eat sushi all day long.
Lauren, if you're still watching, you come here and we'll eat oysters to our heart's content in my backyard. I'll bring a bushel back here in the backyard and we'll sit and eat oysters all night.
She is trying her best to get me to like seafood. She's trying her best.
You need to change, mate.
It's just I've never been able to eat it. I've tried some things, and I don't. She always says you haven't had the right seafood. So I tried crab cakes.
So here's the deal: my daughter-in-law can come down and visit anytime she wants. You stay up there in Alabama and just do what you want to do. He won't try anything.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to send my wife to the oldest city in the nation. Y'all want to eat oysters, fine. As always, she says she never has to worry about me because I can always find something to do. I will disappear. And
no, you won't.
You might have to do a good party for me.
We'll make you eat oysters.
We'll put a pin in that one, okay?
Well,
might need whatever's in that special bottle. Who knows? To do that.
Your students have paid attention. I hope they've gotten two things out of this show tonight. Because I know Davey's sitting at the ready. Mandy Joe, make it a food history lesson. We'll do that.
I've been trying to do that, Mandy. Problem is, we're not allowed to do that because of allergies and stuff like that. They won't let us do stuff like that.
Crap. Because we did when I was a kid. I had a teacher bring in mussels and like all sorts of stuff when I was a kid growing up into different things. And so it was crazy, but I totally faced all the new regulations and everything at the schools because you can't even, like, if kids bring home lunches now, they even have to sit at separate tables. That's as we can tell, I have a kid in the school system.
Ransom Mayhem put a post up. Davey put that post up from Ransom. Yep. He was dropped on his head as a baby.
I'm pretty sure it was my Uncle Ransom who dropped me.
So we'll do an oyster roast here.
Okay.
But let's see. I saw something else. We have been off and on the whole thing.
Yeah, it's been a good episode.
You got great students. We've had a lot of fun, but we have a couple other episodes we have to do. Davey, don't we need to do something like This Week in Nautical History?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and put it on.
Welcome to This Week in Nautical History, sponsored by our friends at Florida Water Tours. Experience the Intercoastal Waterway at its finest, featuring picture-perfect attractions. We begin This Week in Nautical History in the year 1492. Christopher Columbus is the first European to sight Hispaniola, which is modern-day's Dominican Republic and Haiti. 1717, English pirate Blackbeard ransacks the merchant sloop Margaret and keeps her captain, Henry Bostock, prisoner for 8 hours before releasing him. Bostock later provides first record of Blackbeard's appearance and the source for his name. 1872, ship the Mary Celeste is discovered mysteriously abandoned by her crew in the Atlantic Ocean. 1915, Henry Ford's pea ship Oscar II sails for Europe to get the boys out of the trenches by Christmas. 1941, U.S. aircraft carrier Lexington and 5 heavy cruisers leave Pearl Harbor. Also in 1941, first Japanese midget submarine, number 20, attacked by a U.S. ship USS Ward. And again in 1941, Imperial Japanese Navy with 353 planes attacked the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor Naval Base, Hawaii, killing 2,403 people. And finally, also in 1941, British battleship Prince of Wales and battlecruiser Repulse sunk following Japanese aerial attacks off Malaya. 840 men die. And that was This Week in Nautical History.
Great history, guy. I appreciate it always for Longwood. But let's just jump into This Week in History. No man.
Welcome to This Week in History, sponsored by our good friends at Dick's Wings Bar and Grill. Wings, salads, wraps, quesadillas, and more. No matter what your taste buds crave, they've got you covered. We begin This Week in History in the year 1619. 38 colonists from Berkeley Parish, England, disembark in Virginia and give thanks to God, considered by many the first Thanksgiving in the Americas. 1775, at Fort Ticonderoga, Henry Knox begins his historic transport of artillery to Boston, Massachusetts, later forces the British to evacuate Boston. 1791, Britain's The Observer is first published, the oldest Sunday newspaper in the world. 1793, Noah Webster establishes New York's first daily newspaper, the American Minerva. 1816, James Monroe is elected to become the 5th President of the United States, defeating Rufus King of the Federalist Party. 1886, American Federation of Labor, formed by 26 craft unions, Samuel Gompers elected AFL president. And in 1917, USA's 42nd Rainbow Division arrives in France, with Colonel Douglas MacArthur among its ranks. 1927, Duke Ellington opens at the Cotton Club in Harlem. 1941, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivers Day of Infamy speech to Congress, a day after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. 1949, On the Town, the film adaptation of the Broadway musical starring Gene Kelly, Frank Sinatra, Ann Miller, and Vera Ellen premieres. 1954, the first Burger King is opened in Miami, Florida, USA. 1964, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer first airs on TV. 1965, NASA launches Gemini 7 with Frank Borman and Jim Lovell, later the focus of the first crewed space rendezvous. Also in 1965, A Charlie Brown's Christmas, the first Peanuts animated special premieres on CBS in the U.S. 1992, U.S. President George H.W. Bush orders 28,000 U.S. troops to war-torn Somalia. And in 1974, final episode of Monty Python's Flying Circus airs on BBC TV. 1972, Apollo 17 launched, the final manned lunar landing mission, where the crew takes the famous blue marble photo of the entire Earth. 1979, Star Trek, the motion picture, first movie of the series, premieres, directed by Robert Wise, starring William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. And then finally, in 2008, former NFL star O.J. Simpson is sentenced to 33 years in prison for kidnapping and armed robbery. And that was This Week in History.
What a decade or two of history.
Yeah.
You still got some great students bringing in everything they need to bring in. It's been a great show, but we need to close because I've been drinking rum. I'm Santa and tired. And Well, let's see. Thanks for mentoring Star Trek, the movie Navigator. Okay. So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we've done a last minute check of all the comments, and your crew, your students are wonderful. I hope they'll
Thank you.
tune in. Maybe we'll do some things that they can tune in for and get extra credit if you like.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do, talk about it with me, all right?
All right.
And publicly, I'm proud of you. I love you very much.
Thank you. I love you too.
You've done a great job, and it's amazing the power you have over the students you are dealing with. It's wonderful. I won't say anything more than that. On that note, Davey, give us the answer to the joke of the week.
It's killing me.
Okay, it's time for the answer to the joke of the week. What is a pirate's favorite snack? The answer is Chips Ahoy!
Did I see you roll your eyes there, Will, the historian?
Mandy's laughing.
Because it was so obvious that I didn't get it. It was so obvious. And I was like, Chips Ahoy, that makes perfect sense.
So here's one for you. Captain Hook is doing all this Christmas shopping. Where does he go? The secondhand store.
Of course.
Hey, I love dad jokes. You know how you can tell a dad joke? It becomes apparent.
Oh, God, you're here to stop him. He's on a roll.
Yep. All right, Davey. We should say thank you to everybody that's tuned in because this has been a great show. And we are over 2 hours. What? What? We're going to. Go ahead, Davey. Give us our thank you.
The Captain's Quarters podcast is indeed a ship sailing the seas of the world, always in search of history, knowledge, and adventure. It takes a crew to run a ship, so we take this opportunity to thank those who help keep this ship afloat. Our sponsors: St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum, Dick's Wings Bar and Grill, Ancient City Sirens, Spyglass Travel, Marco's Pizza, Florida Water Tours, Riker Reenactors, Paper and Strings, and Shiver Me Pictures. Supporting cast and crew: Captain William Mayhem, Navigator Davey Longwood, Gunner Hellfire Henley, Cartographer Mandy Joe, Juan Cam, and of course the Powder Monkey. Helping others gives the crew purpose. Inc. Investing in Kids. St. Johns County Fire Cadets. Says St. Augustine Youth Services. And the Humane Society. The 4 major charities report, but always room for more. You too can be part of the crew and support the show in many ways. Go to Patreon. Support us with a small monthly contribution as a Powder Monkey or First Mate memberships. Go to YouTube. Hit the like and follow buttons to join our ranks and support the show. Or a single contribution which helps with other expenses of the show. Thank you. It does take a crew.
Good job, Davey. Go ahead and put our platforms up. If you want to watch us on YouTube or Spotify or Instagram, there we are. Take those QR codes and connect with us. Stitcher, iHeart, Castbox, Apple Podcast, Music, Amazon. We're all there. Link up with us. It'd be wonderful. And on that note, show our numbers.
They're actually higher than that.
Really?
Yes.
How much higher?
Last I looked, it was 1,463.
Great.
65.
65. Yep.
I like that.
Mhm.
We're not far off from 1,500. Help us make it. But it's time to sign off. It's time to have a good night. Will the historian, thanks for being a part of my show.
Well, thanks for having me.
For now you know where the rum's always going. My whole set just fell apart. All right. Good to have a good time. Good to have a conversation. We'll talk to you all later on.
Part of the podcast.
Part of the crew.
Always, we can't do it without you. Be a part of us. Till later. Bye-bye.